course. Okay, great. All right. So we always want to be conscious of our mission when we go into a visit with elected officials. Everything that we do and say, we are representing mothers out front when we're there as volunteers as well as staff members. Mothers Out Front's mission. Can I actually have a volunteer to read this part?
Sure. We build our power as mothers and allies to ensure a livable climate for all children.
And so, as you can see, it is future focused. We were founded by mothers, but we're also open to allies. And when we're in those meetings with elected officials, we can speak to them from the perspective of mothers, or even the ethic of care that mothering represents. And that's a natural connection point when it comes to talking about climate issues. Anything else that stands out to folks about our mission?
I like that it's for all children.
Yes.
That, you know, all children of the earth. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So often in life, in the last 100 years, it might have been just for my children. You know, I used to feel that a lot because, you know, I'm older, that I would be at, you know, PTA meetings or something. I realized these people were just really fighting for their children. So this is you know, everybody's child is what we're concerned about, including me as a child, but children of the earth.
Yeah.
That's such a great point, and it's really beautiful how you put that too. So it's built in there that we have solidarity with others.
And it also takes us out of ourselves, which is sort of what you were saying. And it becomes more than just cleaning up our own house, but it's cleaning up the world, our whole house.
It also, because it involves children, it involves touching the future and engaging us in actions today that will affect days to come and years to come.
Awesome. Well, keeping all of that in mind, we're going to talk next. I'll invite Letitia to talk more about how we can mobilize our power as moms most effectively to make change for all children.
So again, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. I remember growing up, we had a tree that was in front of our home, and my mother would go out and she would try to cut up the tree. And it got to the point that, you know, no matter how much she did, the tree had started to mess up or interrupt the foundation of our home. It was actually causing the foundation to be disrupted. So the tree had to come up, but no matter what she was doing, it was not working. She finally talked to the gardener, and he said, it's because you never really got to the root of the tree. You are only cutting at the branches. And so a lot of times we do things, and that's what we're doing. We're cutting at the branches and never really getting to the root of the problem. If we get to the root of the problem when it comes to climate change is about power. And that power for hundreds of years has laid in the hands of the fossil fuel industry. Why is that? Because it is valued at hundreds of billions of dollars. And they have politicized the term climate change to the point that some people think that climate change is a hoax. It's not real. What we are fearing to come will not happen in our lifetime or our children's lifetime. And they feel that, you know, there's really no point in making the change. Will allow things to stay status quo. Well, that's exactly what the fossil fuel industry wants you to do, to believe that it's not real, and to believe that you can't do anything about it, to believe that all you have to do is just live life as you are, so that they can continue to do what they are doing in an extractive economy to harm our climate, to harm our planet. But then we have every one of you that are here tonight that want to make a change to get to the root of the problem and take back our power. So what does that mean? I want you to know that together we have power. My grandmother used to tell me, if you take one finger and you try to strike at something, it doesn't have as much power. But when you ball your fists together, it has a greater impact. Together we can make change. And that is why I like to be a part of Mothers Out Front, because it was where people that felt that they had no power came together to make great changes. And if we look at history, let's look at the civil rights movement. Let's look at suffrage. It all happened because people came together, united, and made change. And today we are the recipients of the hard work that they did by coming together to work together. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you. I don't like boring workshops because I've got kids and chances are I'm going to be distracted. So I need you to be interactive with me. So I want to ask you tonight, why should we meet with elected officials? If anyone wants to come off mute and shout that out, that's fine. Or if you want to feel more comfortable utilizing the chat because your kids may be in the background like mine are about to be in just a moment, and they're going to be loud. So you may feel more comfortable using the chat. That is totally okay. So I'll take a step back. And if you want to unmute yourself, why do we meet with electeds? I'm looking at the chat. It says to build relationships from Wendy. Thank you.
They have power.
Say that again.
They have power.
They have power. Okay. I think it's Nicole. It says they're supposed to listen to us and serve us. If we don't let them know what we need, they won't know what we need. Okay. I see Johanna. I hope I said your name correctly. They make the laws. I see Kate that says they need our information and ideas. I see Becca that says to make sure they know what their base wants. And Lois, they vote and can change the laws. Anyone else want to come off mute or drop something in the chat?
You know, I put this, they need our information and ideas, because earlier in my career, I would meet with more legislatures and they were always needing to have somebody be a voice. Like, you know, hey, make me your spot person to call up and find out about what's happening on the ground in mental health. And so I wanted to have that relationship. So it wasn't an adversarial one. It was, you know, I'm going to be able to give you some information and give you ideas that maybe you're not hearing from anyone else. So I think it's important to build that relationship, is that you're going to give them some honest information without being contentious or pushy, but just constantly give them honest information.
Thank you for sharing that, Kate.
I really agree with that. I think that here in Massachusetts, legislators have to deal with 6,000 to 7,000 bills every 2 years. And there's no way that even the most conscientious legislator would know all those bills. So you build a relationship of trust with them and then bring bills to their attention. And even if they don't co-sign all the ones you ask about, at least they know of these bills. They have been introduced to them. And if you have a real good relationship of trust, they'll often, you know, co-sign with you because they trust your judgment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sue, for sharing that. Any last partakers? Going once, going twice, speak now or forever hold your peace. Well, you guys fooled me. You guys said you needed this training because you needed to know what was going on. It sounds like you guys are all on it. So one of the reasons why we meet with them is to ask them to do something. I'm sure you've identified an area of concern. You've identified a solution. You've identified where you need their help. And so that is one of the reasons why we want to meet with elected officials. Another reason why is because I would hope that all of you are some way, shape, or form connected with Mothers Out Front. Another reason why we meet with them is to introduce them to Mothers Out Front. This is an organization that can help advance the initiatives of your office and also to develop a partnership. Another reason why we meet with elected officials is to find out their positions on what their positions are on climate and energy. We need to know where they stand. These people have been elected by us for us. And if they're working against us, we need to have that conversation. And sometimes if they're still choosing to do things and vote on things and take a position that is against us, sometimes we've got to let them know we got you in the office and we have no problem with getting you out of office. Next point. To learn what opportunities might exist in your community to decrease use of gas, oil, or coal, and increase use of renewable energy. A lot of the elected officials have projects and programs and funding in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our districts, in our states. And so this meeting with your elected official is a way to learn those opportunities. And last but not least, to build a relationship with them that you can draw on to create change in the future. You have to have a relationship. You get greater results when you have a relationship. It doesn't mean that you'll agree on everything. It doesn't mean that everyone will always be right. It doesn't mean that everything will be roses and cherries and butterflies, but at least we have a relationship. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. And last but not least, to build members and leaders and increase their level of engagement. You'll hear stories from those members and leaders of Mothers Out Front and the success that they've had. One of the greatest ways to build our leaders and members is to take them along the way. Yes, we may be staff. Yes, we may be qualified, but there is nothing more empowering than to see our members and leaders sitting across the table and go through the ladder of engagement and have the conversation and set up a meeting with an elected official for themselves. Now, I'm sorry, this time we'll go to the next slide. So how do you obtain a meeting? Does anyone know how you obtain a meeting? Better yet, let's take it one step backwards. When they say, if one of Mothers Out Front leaders or staff come to you and say, hey, we have a meeting, what are your initial thoughts? Are you scared? Are you afraid? Or are you thinking, oh, I've got this? Can you drop that in the chat? Drop that in the chat. Nervous but excited. Yes, nervous but excited. I'm thinking I better get this all together. Show up to their community officers. What is this meeting about? I usually feel intimidated. I'm beginning to see a trend here, and these are all things that I think we should all feel, because this is an elected official. They have some sort of power, but we have to remember we have given them that power. We've elected them into office. It is because of us that they do have that power. But in all honesty, it can be very intimidating to sit across from someone with such power, such tremendous power. So ways that how do we go about obtaining the meeting? Number one, you have to think, is there a mom who is a direct constituent in the elected official's office that you want to meet? Think about your friends and family and say, hey, you know what? I may not live in their district. I may not live in their region, but I have a friend, or I have a cousin, or I have an aunt, or I have a sister, I have a daughter or a grandchild that does. And so because of that, I can work with them to set up a meeting in their region. And then from there, you have them reach out to the elected officials or the staff. So ultimately what happens is there's a chief of staff or a scheduling assistant that works in the office. You'll send an email or you make a phone call requesting a meeting. They'll ask what the meeting is regarding, and if you're a constituent or not, what organization you're with, and you let them know. They'll let you know the dates and times available. And then you get ready to attend the meeting. They also, a lot of elected officials have what's called open hours, coffee chats. I know pre-COVID, and now that we're on this side of COVID, some elected officials are going back to it, but they would have coffee hours. They would go, and I know one elected official here, he would sit at McDonald's every Wednesday in his city, in his local town. And so if you had any issues, comments, concerns, questions, we knew to meet him at McDonald's every Wednesday between the hours of 8 and 10. So some of those coffee hours have become virtual because of the pandemic. But if you see there's any coffee hours, or there are a lot of events that they are hosting, that's probably not the time to say, hey, can we schedule a meeting now? But even just having the conversation with them to say, hey, I would like to schedule a meeting with you to discuss X, Y, and Z. And they'll direct you on which staff member to contact. And be persistent. Sometimes they will try to hide from you because they know what you're going to ask, and they know that you're going to hold them accountable. You've got to be persistent, make follow-up calls. They're very busy. They're in meetings, out of meetings. They're very busy. Don't think that you're going to just getting a meeting is going to be easy and that you're going to get it on the first try. If you don't get it on the first try, don't get discouraged. Keep trying and don't give up. Next slide, please. So how can these meetings help engage or develop mothers and their leadership skills? Again, like I said earlier, there's no greater joy than as a staff to see those that you have worked on a team with to come around and begin to not only sit in the meeting, they go from just listening to now calling the meeting themselves. So some of the ways that you can get them to engage is ask them to attend the meeting. Hey, I'm having this meeting, bring them along with you. There's no greater way to learn than to learn from experience. Another way is to ask them to take on a role at the meeting, whether it doesn't always have to be a speaking role, because again, that could be quite intimidating and they're not ready for that. But they can take notes. They can write the thank you note, the thank you card afterwards, whatever it is that they feel comfortable doing. And then also they can help plan the meeting together ahead of time. You guys develop a talking points. You guys develop an agenda for that meeting. And even if they do want to have a talking role, one of the things that helped me get around that hump is having little note cards with my talking points on them to take them into the meeting so I can stay on task. And debrief as a team how the meeting went and identify next steps. The worst thing that can happen is you have 3 people that attend a meeting and all 3 have different perspectives and perceptions of how that meeting went. So it's very important that after you have the meeting, you guys pull together as a team and debrief. What went well? What did we forget to ask? Do we need a follow-up? How should we proceed with our next steps? And so I'm going to turn it over to Susan. Susan, again, is one of our member leaders, and she is going to be able to share with you an experience of how she attended her first meeting with an elected official, how it went, and where she is now. Susan, it's in your hands.
Thanks, Letitia. Thanks so much. Yeah, this was one of the first actions that I took as a volunteer with my Mothers Out Front team. Within the first few months, I was asked by our coordinator to attend a meeting with the staff of our representative, Zoe Lofgren. And the meeting was being led by one of our allies, 350 Silicon Valley. And I was scared. But I was also excited about our mission, about what we were about, and I wanted to try it. And she reassured me, you don't have to say anything if you don't want to, just going is the first step. And so I attended the prep meeting beforehand. We met, this is 2019, so we met in a coffee shop and right across the street from her office, and we were talking about, okay, what are we going to say, and planning it out. And I had looked up her record, and so I knew what to thank her for. So I volunteered to say the thank you. That's all I had to do. And it was scary. I'm still intimidated when I meet with elected officials, but that helps me get prepared, right? I do my homework. I look up what they've done. I get to thank them. I get to push them a little. But in that meeting, I felt empowered, and I got to see how it worked. And I got to feel less intimidated because I saw that they wanted to hear what we had to say. They needed it. Like you've said, they needed the information to be able to make decisions. So who should go to the meeting? Members of our team, staff, volunteers, and like Letitia said, pulling along somebody new, bringing in someone who's not necessarily on the core team, but pulling in someone relatively new that seems to have that passion. It's an opportunity to show off your power if you have it. Going in with just one person is not helpful, but if you have 3 to 6 people, that's a good range. Occasionally we'll have up to like 8 people. That can be a little intimidating, but sometimes we need it. Sometimes we have different areas of expertise. Constituents from that elected officials area who can hold the decision maker accountable, and also those who are most impacted by the decisions. Like I said, it's really important to move people up the ladder of engagement. So somebody who hasn't done a lot of work with our team, but they seem interested and they seem passionate, to bring them along and train them and reassure them that it's doable, right? Take a chunk, take a piece of it. So it's really good to have one or two newer people. We also, so assembling the meeting team, we want to make sure that we include somebody who has a powerful story to share. So you would, as you heard in the beginning, Letitia sharing her, why she joined Mothers Out Front, right? And how she knew that when she found out that her kids were being, their asthma was being caused by the air in their neighborhood, she felt called to take action. So, and there's a whole training. You can take the personal narrative training, which I highly recommend, learning to tell your story in order to activate other people. But somebody who has a powerful story to share, has been affected by climate change firsthand, is really important. What interests do we represent? So if we have different people with different concerns, we have young people. Young people and they don't have to be moms, obviously, right? If we have some teenagers, some even younger kids, we've had middle schoolers speak very passionately, and really takes the elected officials aback when they hear a young kid. It makes them really take note. And anybody who has a useful connection to the elected official, someone who knows them, or if you know the elected official is a mom, then that's something you can use. You can use that for influence, right? You know that they care about this stuff, that they care about their kids. This is an example of a tool. This is the checklist that our team uses to keep track of each meeting, and I will share this this in the chat in a few minutes. So we keep track of. So sometimes, let me give you an example of why this would be important to have. This past month, our team has been trying to meet with all the council members in San Jose. We're talking about building electrification. We're talking about a problem with gas-powered fuel cells that have been allowed to proliferate. And we're talking about EV infrastructure and the need for that in multifamily housing. So we're meeting with like 10 different people. So I'm coordinating these meetings, and I need to remember, so which person am I contacting for this council member? Which people are attending this meeting? What's their record? And so making sure that I keep everything organized is really important. So I will share this in the chat. And these are roles that are important to take at the meetings. So we need somebody to be the facilitator. It's like the MC saying, hey, thank you very much for having us. This is what we're going to talk about. Let's do some introductions and wind the reading up at the end. We need somebody to tell their story. So in the introductions, have somebody assigned to really delve into the emotional hook, the narrative that makes people understand why this is important. Someone to introduce Mothers Out Front and our mission, the purpose of the meeting and why this is important. Often that's the facilitator. Somebody to make the ask. This is what we want you to do. Often there are different subjects that can be addressed. We have maybe different campaigns that we're talking about, so we'll have different people make different asks. We need somebody to keep us moving along. Somebody else to take notes, and we'll often have them type this in on the agenda in the shared Google Doc, so that everybody has a copy of those notes that we can look at when we debrief. And I think I will pass it now to Maya, who will talk about effective meeting.
Thanks, Susan. Before I start, I see Lois has her hand up. Lois, did you want to ask a question or comment?
Thank you. Yes. I guess it's kind of basic. It goes to the beginning. If, let's say you live in a district where your legislators vote the way you'd like them to vote, do you still, tend to meet with them, or, is it important to meet with them?
That's a really good question. So we do. We have council members that are definitely on our side. They're allies. We can ask them. We can inform them more in depth on certain issues. We can ask them what they need for support. Sometimes they want. They need the public. They need our members to speak up so that they have support for what they want to do. And sometimes they'll have an ask for us, right? Say, oh yes, we want to help you with that. This is what I need help with. I want to increase the tree canopy on the east side of our city. I want to do this. Can you help me with that? So yeah, definitely good to meet with them as well.
So is there a certain point you'd meet with them as a group? I mean, if, let's say, there's no issue with the way they vote.
I think, oh, sorry, Susan, were you gonna take that? Because I was just gonna,
Go ahead. You go ahead.
okay. I just wanted to let folks know we will have time for questions at the end too. But just real quick, I can speak to this. Sometimes with our strong allies, we just might have a different ask. So it's always good to meet with them, but we might scale up what we're asking depending on, if they are already on our side or not. So if you do have someone who's a champion, we might not need necessarily their vote on something, but we might actually ask them to help us influence some of their colleagues. And so we can definitely talk more about that too at the end. So thank you so much, Lois.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good question.
All right. So now that you've got your people, you've got your roles, you're in the meeting, and now I want to chat a little bit about what makes an effective meeting structure. So the structure that I'll talk about, I mean, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but this one was developed and has been used effectively by teams of moms in Massachusetts and California to meet with local officials and also the governor. If you follow this general meeting structure, then we'll be able to not forget any of the key elements of a powerful meeting. The personal storytelling, we know from lots of experience that people, including elected officials, are moved by feelings and less by data, and to ending up with a photo. So I'll talk through them here. So you can have each person introduce themselves, their names, age of their kids. That works really well if you have 3 to 6 people. Sometimes these are really quick meetings, so you have to adjust accordingly with your time. You want to thank them for something they've done in the past that has been in line with what you've asked. You can have, now's the time that your storyteller will share their story about why they're here. It could be a more general public narrative about why they're in climate, or it could be very specific to the topic that you are presenting or the ask you're making. You want to tell them about Mothers Out Front, introduce them to our group and what we do and how we do it. And then finally, you arrive at the purpose of the meeting and why your particular ask that day is important. You'll have a chance to chat with the elected official. My experience is that often sometimes they know about what we're asking, and they've done some homework and they have a little bit of information. Other times they're really like, they're going to keep asking questions to get more information from us because they may be newbies to that topic. So there's a conversation that can go on. And then as you get further in, you'll talk about what the next steps would be, both on your side and on their side. And you wrap up with a conclusion that looks a lot like, here's what we did, and when should we follow up? In meetings that I've been to, we'll often say like, okay, when do you think you'll have more information for us? If they needed to go talk to someone else. Okay, end of the month, let's set a date to check in at the end of the month. And then you don't want to forget to take a photo. So Mothers Out Front is very big on photos. This can happen with a screenshot on Zoom, if that's the meeting you're having, or it can happen, the traditional way if you are back in in-person meetings. This tool, this sheet, is just an example of something to help you keep your group of people at the meeting in line. So who's doing what job, what is the agenda, and it's just to be used internally. Obviously, it could be modified as needed or desired. When you come to the meetings, what should you bring? So if you are in a in-person meeting, you would bring these things to the meeting. They would be a one-pager about Mothers Out Front, information relevant to your ask. So it could be articles or data that you want to share, and then a business card to leave with the elected official. If you have a virtual meeting, which more and more seem to be, then this is something that you could send in an email attachment afterwards. Following up, at the end of the meeting, as we mentioned before, you'll want to have identified and assigned next steps, and that can be for both sides, yours and their sides. So you'll want to wrap up and name those next steps. You're going to send the photo that you took to the meeting organizer or whomever in your team does social media. If you can snag a great quote from the elected official, even better. And then we always want to remember to send a photo and the short blurb about your meeting to story@mothersoutfront.org. That will be shared on the website, and it helps us build our power and see what other chapters are doing. And then you're going to send a thank you note to the elected official, reminding them of next steps and the follow-up that you agreed upon. If you're doing that because you had a Zoom meeting, then you can attach those other documents to it that we talked about in the last slide. And then lastly, you're going to want to debrief with your team. You hit the next slide, Alicia. So this is something that Mothers Out Front thinks is very important, and something that sets us apart from some of the other groups that we've been involved with. So meeting right afterwards can be really effective. If you have been on Zoom, the elected official might get off Zoom, but you could stay on and have a conversation, or if you're in person, you could grab a cup of coffee. But talking about what went well, what you might change next time, what did you learn? Make sure everyone knows who's responsible for the next steps, and set someone in charge of keeping tasks going. And then at a later date, you'll share how the meeting went with the rest of your team, perhaps at your next team meeting. So I will pass it to Alicia next to introduce Heidi Harmon.
Thank you so much. So that was a lot of information. Just want to remind folks that we will also be sending this out. And Susan has a document that contains both of those two tools so that you can tweak them for your own meetings as well. So I'll make sure to send that out to folks. But I believe it's also in the chat if you wanted to take and make a copy for yourself. So the next guest I wanted to introduce can talk to us a little bit about what the experience is like for the elected official at these meetings. And so she's the former mayor of San Luis Obispo, which for our non-California folks, is a beautiful coastal city here in Central California. And she's also now the Senior Public Affairs Director of Let's Green California. So I'll pass it on to Heidi so she can introduce herself a little bit more and talk more about that elected official experience. And then also she will be talking a little bit about an example of legislation in California. And then I'll be able to connect folks right after her with some opportunities for legislative advocacy with Mothers Out Front and for some other events that we're having.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I love this organization. This really gets to the core of why I'm here. I'm sure why we're all here is out of our maternal obligation and also opportunity to make the world a better place for our kids. I feel especially excited because I just blew up this drawing that my kid did when they were 4. They're now almost 30. And I don't know if you can see it. Is it backwards for you? Because it's backwards for me, but it says Supermom versus the devil. And that's still my vibe. So thank you so much for having me. I know I don't have much time, but I just want to also start by just grounding this conversation. And I was a single mom. I was a house cleaner. I didn't necessarily have any of this experience that a lot of us think that we need to have to run and win to be in office. So I want to invite all of you and ask all of you to run for office. You may know this already, but in case you don't, women have to be asked 7 times to run for office before they do. I see at least one, I'm assuming male identified person here. And no offense to them, but they might recognize that men actually often don't need to be asked at all to run for office. And so we really need to really see ourselves in these situations. So, in my case, I went from mom to maid to mayor. And so it was climate change that inspired me to get involved. I ran for office, long story short, after years of activism, and was able to do a lot in elected office. And as you probably know, local is in many ways where it's at. So I did a lot on climate change. And now, as was noted, I'm working at the state level in California, working on policy in the state of California with the idea that I know there's a lot of folks here from different states, but if we can make California the national leader on climate action as it thinks it is, but isn't, we hope that that will inspire the rest of the United States and therefore the world. As the 5th biggest economy here in California with a reputation on cutting edge policy, we hope that we can do that. And so it is so critical to reach out to your electeds, and so much good information about how to do that has been shared. It has a really significant impact. And I know, again, I don't have much time. I would be, here's some things that don't work from my perspective. Starting at 11, by which I mean, even if you're frustrated with your elected, starting off by blasting them with negativity. That's just not going to work at all. And I've had a lot of experiences that have been strange for me when I was mayor, and I was mayor for 5 years, where I was on the same side as the person contacting me, but they were contacting me in such an aggressive way that even that felt like hard pass. I'm not with you on that, because when we're talking about what we're doing, especially from a climate focus, we're not just talking about not having extractive energy. We're talking about not having extractive relationships, right? And so we need to make sure that we're showing up in a way that's really regenerative and life affirming. That doesn't mean that if someone is doing something that is actively against a life affirming policy, that you don't go there, but definitely please don't start there, right? I think most folks are pretty surprised how available their local electeds are. And then hopefully on some level their state folks are. The federal level, I think we all recognize to some extent is, I don't want to call it a lost cause, but that's probably not where we can have the most impact. And so galvanizing your crew, coming from a maternal grounding is so emotionally connecting that I think that is a really great place to start. And I think those of us that are female identified, and even those of us that are not, like, I really want to invite all of us to come from the feminine, right? Like, that's such a powerful place. Everyone at the very least has a mother, right? So there's and you already know that you have that connecting piece. So I think that having that more emotional connecting thread is critical. I am of the belief that we don't need one more data point, one more scientific study, one more any of that whatsoever. We have enough science to understand that we're in, I was trying to think of the scientific term and not cuss, but we're in a deeply problematic situation and our kids' lives are at risk. And what we do in the next 2 months, it feels like quite literally, but certainly in the next 2 years, will determine whether our kids, not only what our children's future looks like, but whether they have a future at all. And so like bringing that, we don't need to know all the details. So I think a lot of times those of us, again, that are women, you know, we feel like we have to have like a binder full of information, and you actually don't. Set that binder down and be real, right? So that's some of the advice that I would offer. And then, so as was noted, I was mayor for 5 years. We did a lot. And now I'm working at an organization called Let's Green California. And we're have some policy in the state of California. So for my California folks on this call, I'd love to connect with you more about that. And it's a way to equitably get folks into clean transportation for predominantly electric vehicles, but also public transportation, a way of streamlining the process for those of you that have ever tried to connect with the EV incentive programs, probably in any state, but I'll just speak for the state of California. It's incredibly complex. It's hard to navigate, and it doesn't work, especially for low and very low income folks who don't have enough tax burden to benefit from tax rebates, et cetera. Also, we're advocating for significantly more EV charging infrastructure. So that's like the very simple version. And I added some things in the chat if you want to learn more. So if you'd like to get involved, I'd love to have some support. And if you want to consider running for office, I already mentioned to Alicia that I'd be happy to come back and talk more about that too, because we need people on the outside demanding. And that's kind of what a lot of us are doing here, but we also need people on the inside deciding. And you could be that person. So I'd love to come back and have a more full-bodied conversation about that, because that is critical. So much of us, and I'll end here, I know we have other folks, but in activism, there's kind of an otherizing that's happening where we feel like, well, I'm an activist or an advocate, and so therefore ... But we need to imagine what the world would be like if all the people, the 20 people that I see here on this call, if we were in office, imagine what that world would be like, right? And imagine all the people that are in the network of mothers up front, if they were in office, what that world would be like. And we could be those people. I was that person, like I said, I went from single mom to maid to mayor. And if I can do that, you can too. So thank you for allowing me to speak. California folks, please reach out so we can make a difference here in the state. And I'd love to come back and talk more about running for office from a climate focused perspective.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And we are really excited about the possibility of doing a training. We'll see if there's interest in possibly doing more than one. I don't want to take all of your time, Heidi, but Heidi has been just such a great resource, and that was really wonderful to hear from the perspective of the elected official, and to hear your personal story, because I think it's really powerful. And on that note, I know that you had talked about or you had referenced the bill that you are working on and that our California leadership team has supported. I'm just going to, we have like 4 more minutes left. I'm going to share some ways that you all can get involved in either this effort with the Senate bill that Heidi's referencing, or with some of our upcoming opportunities. And I know Susan had one that she also wanted to share in the chat. So let me just share my screen again. My son is in the background, if you hear that. All right.
Hola, bebé.
Ida. Dile hola. He says hi. So we do have a national event coming up that I wanted to make sure to plug tonight. So that's our Indigenous Lands, Climate Solutions, and Allyship. So we'll be talking about an Indigenous perspective on the climate, and then how we can be better allies in our fight for climate change, and partnering with the folks who have been taking care of this land here in what's now the United States, in a more holistic way for centuries. So I'm really excited about this event. It's April 26th. That's going to be at 10 a.m. Pacific time and then 1 p.m. Eastern time. So legislative opportunities that we have specifically in California, but I know that there's legislative opportunities in every state that we organize. And so I'll give you your point of contact in the next slide if you don't have that person already. But we are fairly certain that we will have opportunities for legislative visits on Senate Bill 1230 on April 19th. And then Heidi, do you want to briefly explain what Senate Bill 1230 would do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I touched on it a little bit, but it's always hard because I'm learning too. It's a complex process, and getting things through the California State Legislature is wrongfully complex. Anyway, yes, but basically we have a big Green New Deal 800-page policy plan, right? And so this is a first stage of rolling that out in terms of specificity on policy. As you might know, that transportation is the biggest sector, right, of greenhouse gas emissions. I'm sure that's true in every state, but it's definitely true in the state that's famous for driving, which should not be our claim to fame, but it is on some level. And so we are trying to go after that first. And so we want to get more folks in clean transportation. And so we want to streamline the incentivizing process for electric vehicles, and especially with an equity lens, where folks that need it most will get the most support. They will have the ability within 24 hours to understand how much they are eligible for, and they will be able to take that voucher in hand to the dealership and get that at point of sale. Currently, that's not really the process. And as I noted before, a lot of times low or very low income folks, they drive their car till it's dead. They have to get that car immediately. They don't have the bandwidth to wait for a rebate. They don't have the tax burden to benefit from a tax-oriented rebate.
Mm-hmm.
Another aspect is that there's not enough EV charging infrastructure in the state, and that absolutely has to be addressed. And it's, again, especially in low or very low income communities or multifamily housing. So our bill also creates or demands that we significantly more infrastructure around charging, and at least half of that will have to go in low or very low income communities or multifamily housing units, which those of you, like I did, lived in a multifamily housing unit. How are you going to charge? What are you supposed to do? And a voucher, if none of those options work for you for a variety of reasons, there will also be a voucher for public transportation and other micro modalities like e-bikes, etc. We're partnered with the Dolores Huerta Foundation. So Dolores herself, who is 92 years old, almost about to be 93 next week, is with us. I just met with her today. It's an amazing honor to be with her. She'll be joining us on our lobby days, and we're lucky to have her by our side. And so we really have, we see ourselves as an environmental justice organization, and really have an equity lens on clean transportation.
Thank you so much, Heidi. So we're going to be partnering with Heidi's organization on some of those legislative visits and in California. And then also the last ask I wanted to make, well, at least the last one that's up here, is Virginia. We're organizing in Virginia to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And so this actually has implications for multiple states on the East Coast, but our Virginia team is really engaged in this fight, and that's this Thursday. Oh my gosh, the 7th. Say hi, Rafa. Hi. And so, oops. And so that's going to be 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. we're gonna do a virtual rally. So that's that should have been emailed to you all, and so you can sign up online at mothersupfront.org as well. And then please let me know in the chat if there's any of these opportunities that you are interested in. Also, Susan just put her event as well. And then I'll open the floor up in just a minute. I just wanted to make sure that folks saw your point of contact for each state that we have in attendance. So I am available for California and Colorado, and I can forward you to the right local team. And then, as you can see there, there's different contacts. You're probably in touch with most of these people already. So, but thank you so much. We're nearing the end of our presentation now, and so I just wanted to say thanks for coming. It was so nice to meet you and bring people together from all over the country around this really important topic. And hopefully we'll see all of you at our upcoming candidate trainings that are to be scheduled. We can even do like an informal kind of info session about running for office. And then I can open the floor up to Susan to talk about her event. And then I can also stay on to answer questions as well, but if anyone does have to leave, you are able to do so at this time. So thanks so much, everyone. It was so nice meeting you.
Yeah, thanks, Alicia. So this Thursday evening from 7 to 9 Pacific time, I know that's not great for people on the West Coast, but I'm on the East Coast, but maybe if you're a night person, come join us. So we have a speaker whose name I don't remember because I don't have it right at the tip of my tongue. But anyway, his name is Dr. Michael Martin of UC San Francisco and Physicians for Social Responsibility. He's going to explain why natural gas, we call it fossil gas, is bad for your health and the climate. There'll be a Q&A session. And then we'll do what we do every month. From 8 to 9, we'll have a session on learning how to write a top-notch letter to the editor and time to write your own letter. We'll discuss whatever issues are coming up for people or articles that have been recently published. And so you can write on any topic that you choose. We have had a lot of success our first few months having these letter to the editor writing parties. We had 5 letters to the editor published in just 3 weeks. It was amazing. So anyway, I encourage you all to come.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? I know we are over time, so I want to, be respectful of folks' time. But I also want to just make myself available if you do have questions.